Hi everyone, Flavia here and thank you so much for stopping by. I didn't mean to be away for this long, but life got in the way and I just couldn't find the time to edit my videos. We have been doing some renovations in the house, which is such a blessing to be able to do so, but it can be very chaotic. The good news is that we have a brand new kitchen now and I am so happy to be back. I am still not done organizing the new kitchen, but hopefully I will be able to edit and publish another video next Wednesday. By the way, thank you so much for watching my Crafty Advent Calendar series and the kind comments. I noticed that I got many new followers during that series, so know that I appreciate you all for supporting this channel. In this video, I will be sharing creative ways to use our stencil sets featuring Spellbinder's January 2025 Stencil of the Month. And next week, I will be showing you more card designs featuring a few more clubs by Spellbinders, so stay tuned for that. I will be using a layering stencil set with 5 different layers that will allow me to easily add different colors to different parts of this image. Usually when stenciling, we tend to do so over a piece of white cardstock, so today I want to remind you that we can also use colored cardstock for a different look, so I will be stenciling over a piece of Spellbinder's cardstock in the color Pink Sand. I am using Simon Says stamp ink pads to stencil over my panel, but keep in mind that you can use any type of ink pads that you might already have to do this technique. By the way, this bright pink corner piece is something that I made so I can use it as a guide to help me quickly line up the different stencil layers with the cardstock. To make this corner guide, I simply laminated a piece of pink cardstock that was 8.5 by 11 inches, and then I cut it into this L-shaped piece that is upside down now, and I also cut out the leftover pieces onto rectangular shapes that you will see me using in a minute to quickly mask parts of the stencil. Before I began stenciling, I did place my pink corner and the cardstock on top of a grip mat by Waffle Flower. This grip mat is holding them in place, which is very helpful and a great tool to have when stenciling. I am using 2 panels because I want to make 2 note cards today, so I will make sure to stencil 2 panels at once before moving on to the next stencil layer, just to make the process faster. I will be using 3 shades of pink ink to stencil over the flowers and 2 different shades of green ink to stencil over the leaves. And for the center of each flower, I will be using 2 different shades of brown ink. Another great tool to have when stenciling is an ink pad holder, such as this one that I have by Simon Says stamp on the top right corner of the screen. I find this tool to be very helpful because it is like having a third hand. It keeps the ink pad in place as I am inking up my brush with one hand and holding the stencil in place with another. I got it in the teal color to match my other craft tools by Simon Says stamp, but know that it comes in many different colors and it looks adorable in the craft room. To save you some time, I will skip most of the stenciling process, and here is the final result. To clean up my grip mat and my pink corner, I will simply spray water on top and wipe them off with a clean cloth. To clean up the stencil layers, I like to place them on top of a microfiber cleaning cloth, then spray alcohol on top and use another cloth to wipe it off. We could also just take these stencils to a sink to rinse them off, but if you're like me and do not feel like getting up and going to another room to do so, alcohol is definitely a great option for cleaning up these stencils. By the way, even though alcohol is a great option for cleaning up stencils, remember that we should never use it to clean up rubber-like materials such as stamps and grip mats because it will damage it. Off screen, I did trim each panel to 4.25 by 5.5 inches, and as we can see here, they look gorgeous and we can definitely use them as they are. Or we can add even more interest and shine by hot foiling over these stenciled panels, which is what I'm about to do. To do so, I will be using this large hot foil plate included in the Spellbinders January 2025 Glimmer Kit of the Month, and Spellbinders foil in the colors Opal for a softer look and Polished Brass for a more dramatic look. I will be skipping most of the foiling process since it is always the same, but I do want to demonstrate how I sometimes like to cut out my foil pieces to size by using the Spellbinders Quick Trimmer Kit. To use this kit, we need to place the foil between the self-healing mat and this trimmer guide. Then I like to place the hot foil plate on top of the guide to determine where I need to cut the foil. After that, using the foil blade that came with this kit, I will cut out the perfect foil size by placing the blade down in one of these channels and gliding it over the foil. This is a very handy tool to have, and I like to store it on top of my glimmer machine with the other plates, so it is always accessible. When hot foiling, I like to tape the hot foil plate to the cardstock to keep it from shifting during this process. However, since I had already trimmed off each one of these panels, there was no room left to do so, and that is why I advise you to only trim off your panels later when it is time to adhere them to the note cards. Here is the amazing result that we can achieve with the hot foiling technique. I was afraid that the golden foil would be just too much, and that is why I decided to make 2 note cards today. However, I honestly love the golden one. The opal foil is also very beautiful. It gives a softer and very elegant feel to the note card. Let me know in the comments section down below which one of these panels is your favorite. I would love to know. If you happen to get some overfoiling as I did here, do not worry because we will be able to easily remove it. First, I like to try just using a clean brush that is very dense because sometimes the excess of foil is just sitting on top of the paper. Then, when that doesn't do the trick, I go ahead and use a sand eraser. The trick here is to always use a very light hand so you only scrape off the excess foil that is on the raised portion of the cardstock, leaving the engraved foiled lines intact. This is very easy to do, and with a little bit of practice, you will become an expert at removing excess foil. Overfoiling used to be my biggest frustration when crafting, and now I don't even sweat it. I actually find it very satisfying removing excess foil from my panels. I know that many crafters find the hot foiling technique very intimidating, and if you are one of those crafters who are afraid of trying out this technique, please don't. It gives amazing results and it really brings our projects to the next level. And the ironic thing is that once I became comfortable removing the excess foil from my panels and simply accepted the fact that overfoiling is just part of the process, I rarely have this problem now. Again, we could definitely use these panels as they are since they look amazing. However, I want to show you now that we can add another technique on top of these stenciled and hot foiled panels, which is dry embossing, so these panels also have a little bit of texture. However, instead of using an embossing folder, I will actually be using one of the stencil layers to do so. I will begin by lining up the stencil layer number 1 with my panel and taping them together in the back so it doesn't shift when I'm ready to run it through my Platinum 6 machine. You can use any of the stencils that you might already have to do this trick and any die cutting machine. Just remember to check out your die cutting machine instructions for creating your sandwich because it will vary. For the Spellbinders Platinum 6 machine, I will be using plates A, B, and E. Then I will add the panel facing up, taped to the stencil, and on top of the stencil I will add shim F, which is optional, and the adapter plate D. The texture is very subtle, but I do think it makes a difference. Since I used the stencil layer number 1, only these large flowers got a little bit of texture. Before I dry emboss the golden panel, here is a closer look for a quick comparison, and notice that the large flowers on the top panel do stand out more than the large flowers on the panel below, thanks to the dry embossing technique. Moving on, let's now add a sentiment so we can finish today's note cards, because I do think we've done enough different techniques for one day. To do so, I will be using the Spellbinders Clear Stamp and Die of the Month. This set has wonderful sentiments, and I love that it comes with the coordinating die plates, so we have the option to cut them out if we want to. Using my Misty stamping tool, I will stamp a birthday sentiment right in the center of each panel using black ink. I will begin by placing the clean stamp on top of my panel and closing the clear door just to pick up the stamp so I can add ink and begin stamping. However, to make sure I like the placement of the clear stamp, I will now add this clear piece of acetate that came with the stamp set on top of my panel and stamp a sentiment onto this piece of acetate first, just so I can see how it will look in the end and make sure that the placement is right. Since I like the result, I will keep the clear stamp where it is right now, clean up the acetate piece and remove it from my stamping tool so I can now permanently stamp the sentiment onto my panels. This is a very easy trick that we can do whenever we are not so sure about the placement of the stamp, and one that can save us from many frustrations. Last but not least, I will now be making matching envelopes for today's note cards. To do so, I will be using the Stampendas A2 gift card holder and envelope die set to cut out the two pieces needed to make a pocket-shaped envelope. This is my favorite way of making my custom envelopes, and I have mentioned this set many times before, but I do not remember actually showing you these plates in action, and I thought I would do so today because I know that many crafters wonder if this large plate will fit the Spellbinders Platinum 6 machine since it is so big. And as we can see here, it does perfectly. It is very close, but it does cut out the paper beautifully. Whenever possible, make sure to place the large die cutting plates on a diagonal when creating your die cutting sandwiches to avoid any warping of the plates and that loud pop that the die cutting machine makes sometimes. To cut out my envelope pieces, I like to use 65 pounds cardstock. I find it to be the perfect thickness for making envelopes, and this beautiful green cardstock is by Recollections. To save you some money, I recommend saving your specialty cardstock for making your note cards only and using less expensive cardstock for making the envelopes. I usually use Recollections cardstock to do so because they offer beautiful colors, and usually it is an option to buy it in bulk online if you want to, and sometimes we can even find it on sales at Michael's Craft stores. Here is a closer look at the finished note cards with the matching envelopes, and I love how they turned out. I decided to trim off each panel to 5 1/4 by 4 inches before adhering them to the front of an A2 size white note card, so I could have this white trim around each pink panel. And using a stamp included in the stamp set that I showed you earlier, I also stamped the word smile onto the flap of each envelope. If you're interested, I have a list of all products used in the description box down below. And if you make something inspired by this video, make sure to tag me on Instagram. I would love to see what you create. For pictures and more information, make sure to visit my blog. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Take care and happy crafting!